Woo! So this would be Wednesday, November 4th, regular class. We are going to finish going over our story of the necklace and find out who dies and what horrible things happen.
So what? He's kidding.
Oh my gosh.
Hashtag spoiler. So there. We do have the homework, so make sure we'll go over that here in just a moment. With the homework, let's see, download the story homework number 2 and then download the fun they had. The quizzes coming up this week. Both of them are going to be over the story of the necklace and then also the story of the fun they had on, excuse me again.
No.
Bless you, whatever you'd like to say.
That's gross.
Gesundheit, that's for sneezes. On the homework with the 3 options, there is an option that's new where you have to do option 3 where you have to do background knowledge and confusing statements. And for, can I do that? Let's try it. Oh, hang on, it's an adventure. No, not that. Follow along with my adventure. Adventure time. Adventure time. Hang on. People at home. No.
Should you just get like a wireless keyboard with a trackpad on it?
Or, boom.
Button.
When you take a look at the homework and you go on to it, option 3, you have to do confusing and background knowledge ones, where confusing is where things in the story that confuse you. Why did the character do this, or why would the character do that? Not things I want you to answer, you just have to come up with the questions. The background knowledge is where you connect them to your life in some way. And then for the, that's probably not going to work. For option number 2, if you choose the letter 1, it says school must be fun. I give you the letters ahead of time, and you have to do those letters. Make sure you have at least 6 words in each one. All right, yay, that was exciting. Then, back to the class stuff. So exciting. Work. There we go. And
It's being
and
slow.
boom. To our story. Now we're done with that. Now we're going to turn on both lights. Yay! So we can focus on me, because I know the picture's up there. Our story so far. Who's our main character?
Matilda.
Nice one. We have
The brat.
Matilda, who apparently, let's back up. What are our thoughts on Matilda? What do we know about her?
She's not bad.
Isabel.
She's loving.
She's really greedy and only cares about herself.
Ouch. Greedy, cares about herself. Morse.
She's a diva.
Oh!
Apparently she's a diva. Bayer.
She is a hottie.
She's attractive.
Quote unquote from the story.
Uh-huh.
She's poor
Uh-huh.
and she's with
Gesundheit.
a poor man.
Uh-huh. And
And
she
so
is-
she's not whatever you called her, greedy.
Okay.
Because if she was, her good looks would have gotten her like
So she wants to be greedy, but she doesn't have enough money to be greedy.
no.
Oh.
No, she could be greedy. Like she could have gotten
You
with,
were
like,
making
a
no
rich
sense.
person.
She could have got like
Cauliflower?
She covets the rich life.
She does. Nice use of the word covet. Covets the rich life. Vega?
once she has one thing, she's like she has to have another thing.
She does.
That's
see
every
the-
kid though.
That's every kid, but she's an adult. Adults are supposed to be normal. Reagan?
She's a horrible person, and she doesn't deserve that, her husband.
Wow.
Yes.
Because he gave her $400 for a
Did.
dress.
And then she wants more.
And then the one thing
How
is
much
more.
money are wedding
Tommy?
dresses?
She's
Wedding
right
dresses?
on how that
You're fine.
She's right on how he doesn't deserve her, but also what I would like to see is that she gets a better husband at this party.
Then you're hoping that she goes husband shopping and upgrades.
Wow.
Law?
Poor guy. She's a diva. She's a brat too. She's like a child. She's really childish.
She is.
She's okay. She's like my sister. When she like
Don't make it
she
too
wants
personal.
more. Always more.
So then her husband tries to do something nice for her. And what nice thing does her husband try to do for her?
Buy her a dress.
Before
Or
the
give
dress.
Her money to no. Give
Brings her an
invitation.
invitation to a
Party.
big fancy party. And how does she react to the invitation to the big
She gets
fancy
really
party?
mad.
She gets upset because she doesn't have a dress. So her husband hooks her up with the dress. And how does he hook her up with the dress?
He gives her $400.
That's where the money comes in. He gives her the $400. What was he? He had $400. Why?
To buy a
Buy a
gun.
gun.
He was saving $400 to buy a gun, and then gave it to her instead. Then we get closer to the day of the party, and she's upset again. And why is she upset this
She doesn't
time?
have jewels.
No jewelry. Her husband once again tries to come up with an idea to help her. And what idea does he come up with that she poo-poos, Vanessa?
This other lady.
And that's one of the ideas. He's like, hey, you should go ask this other lady. That's his second suggestion, which she does go with because it allows her to get something rich. You remember what his first suggestion was that she laughed at him for, Omar? Yeah, he was like, go wear flowers. Like, I'm not putting weeds on my body. That's ridiculous. And so he's like, well, then go borrow from a rich person. He's like, oh, that's a wonderful idea. All right, so we'll keep going from there to find out because now we're going to get to the exciting part to find out. Third column, almost all the way towards the bottom, where it says she uttered a cry of delight because he has come up with this wonderful idea. She uttered a cry of delight. That's true. I never thought of it. The next day, she went to see her friend and told her her trouble. Mrs. Forestier went to her dressing table, took up a large box, brought it to Mrs. Loisel, opened it, and said, "Choose, my dear." First, she saw some bracelets. Sorry, hiccups. Then a pearl necklace. Then a Venetian cross in gold and gems of exquisite workmanship. She tried the effect of the jewels before the mirror, hesitating, unable to make up her mind to leave them, to give them up, and she kept on asking, "Haven't you anything else?" "Yes. Look for yourself. I don't know what you'd like best." Suddenly, she discovered in a black satin case a superb diamond necklace. Her heart began to beat covetously. Her hands trembled as she lifted it. She fastened it round her neck, upon her high dress, and stared in shocked wonder at the beautiful sight of herself. By the way, covetously, we've seen that word before. What does it mean?
To shower. Like over someone.
Shower.
No, like not like that.
It was in two different stories. One in Annabelle Lee, it talks about the angels who covet the love.
Jealous?
And then it talks about, in there you go, Richard Cory, it talks about the fact that town people, yeah, to shower them with jealousy. So the fact that just looking at it makes her feel jealous of its existence. Isabel?
What if she goes to the party and then finds a new husband, and then her husband's like crying in a corner?
What if?
Oh, poor guy.
Interesting.
That'd be awesome.
What if she were standing and didn't put both feet on the ground? These are all good questions. In that case, it would charge that person points. That's a solid point. I know, I was very silly. I guess it was my fault. Then, with hesitation, she asked in anguish, Could you lend me this? Just this alone?" "Yes, of course." She flung herself around her friend, embraced her crazily, and went away with her treasure. By the way, what's the name of our story?
The necklace.
What did she just borrow?
The necklace.
Might be a connection.
Stuff.
Oh, really?
Hey, where's
She's gonna lose it.
It's getting real.
It's going down for real.
Oh.
The day of the party arrived. Mrs. Loisel was a success. She was the prettiest woman present, elegant, graceful, smiling, and quite above herself with happiness. All the men stared at her, asked her name, wanted to be introduced to her. All the rich young bachelors were eager to waltz with her. Even the minister himself noticed her. She danced madly, enthusiastically, drunk with pleasure, with no thought for anything in the triumph of her beauty, in the pride of her success, in a cloud of happiness made up of this universal worship and admiration, of the desires she had aroused, of the completeness of a victory so dear to her female heart. She left about 4 o'clock in the morning. Since midnight, her husband had been dozing in a deserted little room, in company with 3 other men whose wives were having a good time. He threw over her shoulders the jackets he'd brought for them to go home in, modest, everyday clothes, whose poverty clashed with the beauty of the ball dress. She was aware of this, and was anxious to hurry away, so that she should not be noticed by the other women putting on their costly furs. Mr. Loisel restrained her. Wait a little. You'll catch cold in the open. I'm going to go fetch a cab. But she would not listen to him and rapidly descended the staircase. When they were out in the street, they could not find a cab. They began to look for one, shouting at the drivers whom they saw passing in the distance. They walked down towards the river, desperate, shivering. By the way, because we know what time of year it's taking place. What time of year does it take place?
Winter.
Nice, we're done, because it was taking place in January. So we know it's taking place in winter.
Or it could be.
No, it's not.
Could be
At last, they found on the main avenue one of those old night prowling taxis, which is only to be seen in cities after dark, as though they were ashamed of their shabbiness in the daylight. It brought them to their door on Martyr Road, and sadly, they walked up to their own apartment. It was the end for her. As for him, he was thinking that he must be at the office at 10 in the morning. She took off the garments in which she'd wrapped her shoulders so as to see herself in all her glory before the mirror. But suddenly, she uttered a cry. The necklace was no longer around her neck. "What's the matter with you?" asked her husband, already half undressed. She turned towards him in distress. I've no longer got Mrs. Forestier's necklace." He started with astonishment. "What? Impossible." They searched in the folds of her dress, in the folds of the coat, in the pockets, everywhere. They could not find it. "Are you sure you still had it on when you came away from the ball?" "Yes, I touched it in the hall of the ministry." "But what if you lost it in the street? We should have heard it fall." "Yes, probably we should. Did you take the number of the cab?" "No." "You didn't notice it, did you?" "No." They stared at one another, dumbfounded. At last, Mr. Loisel put on his clothes again. "I'll go over all the ground we walked and see if I can't find it." And he went out. She remained in her evening clothes, lacking strength to go into bed, huddled on a chair, without the ability or power of thought. Her husband returned about 7 in the morning. He had found nothing. He went to the police station, to the newspapers to offer reward, to the cab companies, everywhere that a ray of hope sent him. She waited all day long, in the same state of bewilderment at this fearful catastrophe. Mr. Loisel came home at night, his face lined and pale. He had discovered nothing. "You must write to your friend. Tell her that you've broken the clasp of her necklace and you're getting it mended. That will give us time to look about us." She wrote as he came up with the right words. First off, how'd the party go?
It went well. A few drunk people, but it's okay.
There were some drunk people. What time did she finally leave?
Like
4 in the morning.
4 a.m., so she was there a little on the late side. But did people think she was beautiful?
Yeah.
Did people want to dance with her?
Yeah.
Did she have a great time?
Yeah.
That's what's important, because, you
No,
know,
because then she didn't want to
me
be
talking,
seen with
not
the
you to her
husband.
person. Bad job, Jeannie. And so,
Bad job.
you talk out loud, I call you Jeannie. And so, I make you so angry. And so the fact that she had a good time, and the fact that she's such a good person, that the good things happen to good people, kind of issue going into it. But then we get home and we discover a problem. What problem happens when we get home? Ainsley.
She doesn't have the necklace.
And of course, is it her necklace?
No.
No. The necklace is gone and it belongs to her rich friend, and that's definitely not going to be a good thing. So they do the best thing, the same thing we teach every kid to do. As soon as you find out you've lost something, what do?
Lies.
They lie. They're like, "That's a good idea. Let's lie and cover our tracks, because lies help everything." And so they immediately come up with a lie saying that they broke the clasp. Do you guys know what the clasp is?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
like the thing that clamps the necklace together. And the thing I have right here. This is a connection. I wear
Good
it
job.
every day.
The little connecty piece right there. Look at that. I just made a connection.
Homework.
Like giving away homework answers left and right. So they decide to lie to see where we can go from there. By the end of a week, they had lost all hope. Mr. Loisel, who had aged 5 years, declared, "We must see about replacing the diamonds." The next day, they took the box which had held the necklace and went to the jeweler's whose name was inside. He consulted his books. "It wasn't me who sold the necklace, ma'am. I must have just supplied the clasp." Then they went from jeweler to jeweler, searching for another necklace like the first, consulting their memories. both ill with remorse and anguish of mind. In a shop at the upscale mall, they found a string of diamonds which seemed to them exactly like the one they were looking for. It was worth $40,000. They were allowed to have it for only $36,000. It's a discount. It's like 10% off.
Yeah.
They begged the jeweler not to sell it for 3 days, and they arranged matters on the understanding that it would be bought back for $34 if they found the other one before the end of February. Just a good deal. If they go back and find it, they can only lose $2,000, so it could be worse. Mr. Loisel possessed $18,000 left to him by his father. He intended to borrow the rest. So, just to have an idea, how much was the necklace supposed to cost?
$40,000.
They get a discount down to?
$36,000.
How much money does he have saved up?
$18,000.
So how much does he have to make?
A lot.
18.
Good job, because I'm sure they count that answer in math.
Yes,
What's
they
this
do.
number minus this number? A lot. 18,000. So he has to get $18,000. Now remember, how much did he save up for a gun? So apparently it's not easy trying to get all the money. So getting the 400 wasn't easy, and now he has to get 18,000 in 3 days.
He said he's gonna borrow.
Borrow? Yeah, he'll be fine.
But then he's gonna pay back with interest.
Even though he's already
I don't
He
know
did
that
borrow.
stuff.
Getting 1,000 from one man, 500 from another, $5 here, $3 there. He gave promissory notes, entered into horrible agreements, did business with loan sharks and the whole tribe of evil moneylenders. He mortgaged the whole remaining years of his existence, risked his signature without even knowing if he could honor it, and, appalled at the agonizing face of the future, at the black misery about to fall upon him, the prospect of every possible physical attack and moral torture, he went to get the new necklace and put down upon the jeweler's counter $36,000. When Mrs. Loisel took back the necklace to Mrs. Forestier, the latter said to her in a chilly voice, "You ought to have brought it back sooner. I might have needed it." She did not, as her friend had feared, open the case. If she had noticed the substitution, what would she have thought? What would she have said? Would she not have taken her for a thief? We're going to come back to that paragraph at the end, because that paragraph is going to be ironic. So when we get to the very end, now the thing is, knowing it's ironic doesn't even tell you what's going to happen yet.
Mr. Brovicast.
Just know that that little part will end up being ironic.
Now how
Jake.
you, that paragraph is said a thief.
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking, since you said it's ironic,
Uh-huh.
that the rich girl went to the party, stole it, so then they would give her another one.
That could make it kind
Or
of
maybe
ironic.
the rich girl stole it from
Isabel?
What if she does notice it? Could they put her in jail and just throw it all in?
Could be. Maybe that's it.
That'd be
End
really
of story.
cool.
Done. Or close to. Rooney?
Why would she go to
We do
jail?
the rest
We're getting ready.
because she's.
I'm not done. Yes?
Okay, you wanna know what makes me mad about this?
What?
God.
The husband does everything.
I was
And he
Get
pays
ready to bring that
for the
up.
dress.
Uh-huh.
He pays for the jewelry to be
Uh-huh.
replaced.
I said that yesterday.
And it makes me so
I said
mad
that yesterday. I said
because
that
she
she did a job.
does nothing.
She,
She
hey,
sits there.
it looks pretty. That is not
That
easy.
doesn't matter.
She has to bring like
No
a
one
smile.
cares about her beauty.
I do.
So yeah,
Oh,
I
no.
was thinking the same
And
thing.
go away.
Her husband is the one that's risking
Shoot.
his name and borrowing all the money and doing all the work and stuff like that. But
It's
love.
terrible.
It's out of love.
I'm pretty sure he's gonna be fed up with this by the end of the story and leave her.
Someone needs a
I
gun.
hope he does.
Ruda?
I really do.
She's I'm feeling that the ironic might be that the diamond necklace that the owner had was a fake diamond. That I was
Could be. Isabel?
So what if he spent all that money and if they just told them, then they could have just paid them. that
That's
much
true
money.
too. Let's find out.
Okay.
Mrs. Loisel came, this next part we're going to dedicate to Ainsley. It's called Making Ainsley Happy. Mrs. Loisel came to know the horrible life of being absolutely poor. From the very first, she played her part heroically. This fearful debt must be paid off. She would help pay it. The servant was dismissed. By the way, they had a servant who came and worked in their house, and she thought of herself as poor. So if you don't have a servant in your house, obviously you're poor. I had no idea I was poor, but obviously I am because I don't have a servant. I have children. That's kind of like a servant. They moved to a smaller apartment. They even rented a room in their new small home for a local man to live in. She came to know the heavy work of the house, the hateful duties of the kitchen. She washed the plates, wearing out her pink nails on the coarse pottery and the bottoms of pans. She washed the dirty linen, the shirts and dishcloths, hung them out to dry on a string. Every morning she took the dustbin down to the street and carried up the water, stopping on each landing to get her breath. And, clad like a poor woman, she went to the fruit market, to the grocer, to the butcher, a basket on her arm, haggling, insulted, fighting for every wretched penny of her money. Every month, bills had to be paid off, others renewed, time gained. Her husband worked in the evenings at putting straight a merchant's accounts, and often at night he did copying at 50 cents a page. And this life lasted 10 full years. At the end of 10 years, everything was paid off. Everything. The loan shark's charges, the accumulation of superimposed interest on the money borrowed. But Mrs. Loisel looked old now. She had become like all the other strong, hard, coarse women of poor households. Her hair was badly done. Her skirts were awry. Her hands were red. She spoke in a shrill voice, and the water slopped all over the floor when she scrubbed it. But sometimes, when her husband was at the office, she sat down by the window and thought of that evening long ago, of the ball at which she'd been so beautiful and so much admired. What would have happened if she'd never lost those jewels? Who knows? How strange life is, how fickle, how little is needed to ruin or to save. One Sunday, as she'd gone for a walk along the riverbank to freshen herself after the labors of the week, she caught sight suddenly of a woman who was taking a child out for a walk. It was Mrs. Forestier, still young, still beautiful, still attractive. Mrs. Loisel was conscious of some emotion. Should she speak to her? Yes, certainly. And now that she had paid, she would tell her everything. Why not? She went up to her and said, "Good morning, Jean." The other did not recognize her and was surprised at being familiarly addressed by such a poor woman.